Been about time that we're going away. Been about time, it's a whole nother day. Put the heat on to the Tetons with the neon you can lean on. Never get beat on, hey. But you don't even listen, huh? But you're not even wishing, huh? You just keep on fishing, huh? Wonder where we go, we don't even know, huh? You hit me like a megaton. You hit me like a megaton. You hit me like a megaton. Watch it on a jumbotron. Hit me like a megaton. Watch it on a jumbotron. Hit me like a megaton. Dreams, 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 dreams. On fire, fire. Dreams, 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 dreams. On fire, fire. Yeah, living life with never fearing of it. Take a bite and chew it 'cause you love it. I've been inside a rapid rising oven. Now I'm hotter than a proper English muffin. You're never gonna get that change, never gonna get that cane, never gonna get that brain. Always gonna be that hang, man, hang. And you just need to listen. You hit me like a megaton. You hit me like a megaton. You hit me like a megaton. Watch it on a jumbotron. Hit me like a megaton. Watch it on a
What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode, I think it's 11. Yeah, episode 11 of Q&A Friday on Montana Minutes. How's everyone doing? I just got all them shares out. I didn't even get them all out. It's all right. We'll toss one right there, too. Oh, we're just waiting on our guest to join us. We are having Elizabeth Sage from St. Paul, Minnesota call in today to talk about the ganjier program. Is it loaded? What's that say? Wait, what?
She can't hear us yet. She's connecting her.
Oh, okay.
Has to start video.
I don't know. Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. How is your day going?
It's going very well. How about you?
Oh, not too bad. How's the weather over that way?
It was sunny, then it was raining, and like who knows what else is in store
Hey.
for us today.
Sounds like you're here.
Yeah, we're just that great big expanse of the Midwest here.
Oh,
Although, what do you
right.
consider yourselves in Montana, right? Because you're not quite the West. Are you still Midwest? Or you
I always
own
hear-
sort of like
I always hear everybody refer to us as the Midwest. I just refer to us as Montana.
yeah.
Most people
You're
are like,
kind of
where's
like in
that?
that mountain range, like Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. I feel like are kind of their own little niche state.
Yep. It definitely is. Oh, we appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We are live on Facebook and YouTube if you wanted to be able to see their comments or anything.
Oh,
But
cool. Thank you.
so how long have you been a ganjier? Did I pronounce that right?
Almost.
Ganjier?
People say it a lot of different ways. I say ganjier. I hear ganjier. I hear ganjier. Like it's kind of, I think just, each of our dialects lends to it what it will.
Right.
But I got my certification in the very first class in September of 2021.
Oh, so it's been quite a while now.
Almost 3 years. Yeah.
Nice. We've been recreational here for just shy of 4 years, I believe it is. So, and
Oh,
we
nice.
we have, I think it's two certified ganjiers here. One that's been certified for about 2 years, I want to say.
Okay.
Uh, so when did the ganjier program start?
So it was started. I will do my full disclosure that I have my own. It's sort of a ancillary company that works in partnership with Green Flower.
Right.
So I can certainly speak on them, but I don't represent them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just to be real clear on that. But they started. I think the idea came about probably like 8 or 9 years ago, and Kevin Jodrey, who is sort of a Humboldt legend, it was the name that his children came up with for him. And they're like, Dad, you know everything about weed. Like, what do you call yourself? And one of the kids like, I think you're like a sommelier, but for ganja. And so put those two together and you've got ganjier. And so he took the idea. He worked in partnership with Green Flower Media, who is a leader in the space when it comes to cannabis education. Most of what they do is university partnerships where they have curriculums that they plug and play at different places all over the US. I know here in Minnesota, I think there's 3 or 4 institutions that they're working with right now. So they're definitely ahead in that cannabis education space. And so while they were targeting the academic space with those programming, they were looking for what is that connoisseur space? How do we put some metrics around quality and decipher some of that stuff? So they got together with Kevin and the Ganjier program was born. A lot of it happened before and during COVID. So when I heard about it, it was November of 2020. And my background is in sales and marketing. And I spent most of my 20s and 30s in Chicago before moving back to St. Paul in 2018. And I knew when I moved back here that I wanted to pivot into the cannabis industry, but there wasn't a lot of opportunities. And coincidentally, Illinois had just legalized by executive order within 6 months of me leaving. So it's interesting because I don't know that I would have ever left Illinois because I wanted so badly to be in the space. But in hindsight, I'm very grateful because Illinois is a really tricky market to be in.
Right.
So I heard about it. I was like, this is what I need. I need that deeper level of education. I've been a consumer since I was 15 years old. So we're talking about almost 30 years now. And I wanted more knowledge. I knew it made me feel good. Why did it make me feel good? How did it make me feel good? All of that. So I started in March of 2021. I went out to Humboldt and took my live training in July. And then I went back in August and got my certification.
So that live training, what was that like?
Mm. It was, it was intimidating in a lot of ways and very overwhelming, but so amazing. And the people are really incredible. I think I went into it with a little bit different mindset because I didn't know a lot about the cannabis industry. I knew quite a bit about cannabis by the time I got there, and I had seen a lot of these people, all the instructors on television, but I didn't have this preconceived notion of any of them or past references to them. So while a lot of people showed up there and they're starstruck when they meet some of these people, it wasn't like that for me. And I think it allowed me to just be in that room and absorb what I could. But there's a circle that you start with, a little icebreaker, because everybody loves an icebreaker. And people go through and they're talking about their relationships with the plant and how they are in the industry. And I'm not what people typically think of as a cannabis consumer. And I recognize that. In a room full of 20 people, there were 3 women. And one of them was a grower in Humboldt, and one of them was, a fourth generation legacy family and, has grown her whole life, grows now, works in extraction lab, and me. And I worked for McKinsey Consulting at the time. And, it's a different set of skills that I bring to it. And so as we did our circle and everybody's, I'm a grower, I'm a processor, I'm a this, and I'm like, I bring a different set of skills to this. Like I'm a lover of the plant and I have really good people skills, technical skills, all of these other things. So how can I help bring what I have and marry it into this world of all of the amazing things that you guys have?
So, and how did you exactly manage to do that?
Well, it was sort of, the program itself is incredible, but it's static. And so the information that you learn online is in modules that you watch, and there's not an interactive component. And you go to Humboldt and you have this amazing experience. but then you leave and there's no way to really stay connected to that. And especially 3 years ago, there wasn't a Facebook group the way there is now. There's a LinkedIn group that people can connect on. And so I had found another woman on Instagram that was part of the program. And we started talking every week. And then we started finding more people and more people. And somebody would go to training and bring their friends. And over the course of 2 years, we amassed this amazing community full of people. And we got together initially once a week to start talking about the modules and go through that information. It's so much information to digest and so many questions come up. And I needed a space to be able to ask those questions and find answers. And it turns out so did a lot of other people. And we've moved on from that to where we do a lot of technical and trade skill stuff. So whether it's devices or techniques or different types of things that are ancillary to the industry, just to make sure we have a good, robust knowledge of all of the different things in there. And then we also work with different cultivators across the country, and we perform our systematic assessment protocol on some of their offerings. And we do that in order to help the students who are waiting to be certified make sure that they're staying calibrated and they're understanding how to perform the assessment. And we do it for the certified ganjiers that are all across the country that want to stay calibrated with each other. They want to see what market looks like in some of these other places. It's turned into just a really unique space full of amazing people who donate their time and their talents to make sure that everybody who's in the community really is the best representation of what a ganjier should be.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is.
So we had a question from one of the viewers. They asked, can anyone become a ganjier?
Absolutely. It's an open enrollment type situation where you go through and you have to be able to pass the test. So I reference the online hours, and at the end of those, there's a knowledge check, and all of that is taken and reformulated into a written test that when you go take your testing, you go through that first. Then you go something called the customer interaction protocol. And so ganjier is sort of a broad concept, was designed for someone who would be of service to another person, right? When you go to a restaurant and you have the sommelier come over, they're of service to you, recommending wines and being able to explain why. So that's, again, the same ethos behind ganjier.
Wait,
So
they actually have
yes,
those in restaurants?
sommeliers.
They have those in restaurants?
Oh yeah. So if you go to like a high-end restaurant or steakhouse
Wow.
and you say, I'm having the beef, would you like our sommelier to come over and recommend something for you? Or when I lived in Chicago, there was this great show called Check Please, and the woman who hosted it was a sommelier. And so like people would talk about their different restaurants that everyone would try, but she would bring in like some wine pairings and recommendations to them. Alpina Sign was her name. She was great.
Oh, that's
But
really
yeah,
cool.
so I mean, and it's the same, like a lot of breweries will have a beer cicerone who is the person who has all of that depth of knowledge in there. When you're in the cheese industry, there's cheesemongers. Like truly every kind of food has its own connoisseur.
We come from we're not really like a little town anymore, but we're still growing, so we don't
Yeah.
have those at restaurants. Or at least I feel
Yeah.
like I've never had one at a restaurant.
I think it really depends, right? I lived in Chicago and I worked in corporate America. So you combine those two things, expense accounts, and I've been to a lot of very nice restaurants where I don't pay the bill. And so,
Right.
like, yes, if you'd like to come over and recommend a $350 bottle of wine, absolutely, I'll try that. And honestly, it does taste better.
I bet. I bet. Uh, so you had mentioned staying calibrated.
Hmm. Oh, actually, you know what I was mentioning the customer interaction protocol. So that is its own set of assessments where you have to be able to um, be, you would pretend it's a role playing situation and you have a character that or somebody has a character that they're playing, one of the instructors, and you have to ask them about certain things to figure out what is going to help them. So you're asking about their experience, you're asking about the set and setting in which they're going to do this. You can't make any medical claims. You have to ask them about their budget. You ask them about the method of consumption that they would like. So it's this back and forth. You're practicing your active listening skills, all of that. And that's your second exam. And then your third exam is your systematic assessment protocol. And I think that's where you were going with the calibration. And so what that is it's a 100-point scale, similar to the Robert Parker, which is the wine scale that is used, similar to the beer industry uses a 100-point scale. And each of these sections of the assessment has points in play. And we've got the appearance, which is the first thing we look at, and things in there. We're looking at trichome coverage. We're looking at the leaves. We're looking at the trim, all of that good stuff. Then we're looking at the aroma. So when you pop the jar, how strong is that? Are you holding it right up there to get a smell? Are you all the way over here to get a smell? How many layers is in there? How much complexity is in there? Because you can, categorize cannabis usually into about 5 different categories, but within each of those, you get so nuanced, right? And it's like, oh, it's fruity. Well, is it fruity citrus or is it fruity like a stone fruit? And oh, it's citrus. Well, is it citrus like a tangerine? Is it citrus like a lime? Is it citrus, like there's so many different nuances to it that you can go into. And then of course that does carry over into the flavor category. Does it last on your palate for a long time? How thick is the smoke? What does the ash look like? And then finally your overall experience. And that can certainly vary from person to person. Your set and setting matters, the cultivar, all of these different things come into play. But you take all those, you put it into a calculation, and then you come up with a 100-point score, or, usually somewhere between 77 and about 89 is where I think most things fall into that band. That's kind of your mid to high end range.
I had one of the viewers said, "I think I found my calling."
It is. No, and so it's, like I said, it's such an incredible program and there's so much cool stuff that goes on in it. It just felt like we needed to have a place to be able to keep learning more and more of this. And it really has been such an incredible group effort, and so many different people are coming in from all different areas of the industry, and they bring different things with them. So
Right.
even if we're having a conversation about extraction, in that conversation is a grower, is a retail person, is a doctor, is somebody who works in compliance, is a lawyer, is like, you name it. And they're here in the US, they're in South America, they're in Europe, they're in Canada. So we're having these high level conversations with people across the industry, across the globe. And I think that's what makes it so cool, is because the insight that you get is just so incredibly diverse. And that allows the knowledge to just expand and explode.
Yeah, and I think having a network that stretches that broadly uh, helps start to chip away at that stigma of stoners.
Absolutely. Well, and you hear people using their voice, and I recognize that I'm in a fairly privileged place where I can use my voice. And despite the fact that I'm a woman, I'm a mom of 3, I'm all of these other things, like, I'm pretty loud and proud about my use, because that's a privilege that's afforded to me. But it's something that not everybody's comfortable with. And there are people that I know that are amazing CEOs of companies that are in cannabis that will still go out back in the alley to consume,
Yeah.
because there's this prohibition mindset that doesn't leave. And there's, you get that where you're just not sure, you're distrustful, and that needs to start to go away. It doesn't
Right.
happen overnight, but the more people are able to talk about what they've been through and what they want to see from the industry, the more other people resonate with all of these different stories.
Right. So we had a viewer ask, where do they enroll, or what's the place called?
So it is, I think if you just go to www.ganjier.com, you can Google, like, what is a ganjier, and it'll come up with the website right there, and they can go through there. There's sort of 2 ways that they do it. You can take just the online portion and you never go out to campus to do the training or testing. And I want to say that's $700, or the whole package is $3,000, which is an investment, but I honestly think it's the experience of a lifetime. Every time I go up to Humboldt, I cry. Like it's in, like I just weep as I drive through there. Because it's so beautiful and it's so special, and you hear all of the stories of the people who for so many years kept this plant not just alive, but they kept it growing and they kept breeding it and they kept doing such cool
Right.
things with it. And there's so much love up there, and there's just so much incredible goodness that it's been heartbreaking to see a lot of that go away, and California's legalization not go the way that they had promised a lot of those farmers. And so here in Minnesota, as I'm looking at us trying to write some rules, and we're looking at, there's no good states to look at is really the problem, right? There's a handful that did it better than others, like maybe Arizona and Missouri don't seem terrible. I don't know about, you tell me, in Montana, how did they do with legalization?
I mean, some people will tell you they're idiots and did a shit job. Other people will tell you they did a fantastic job. I felt like they were just trying to go their own way instead of following the path of a way that was already carved.
Hmm.
But I mean, things are kind of starting to iron out now that we've been recreational for a few years.
Well, let
And
me ask you, like, what do you pay for an eighth?
for an
You
eighth,
go into the,
it depends on where I go. So if I go to a dispensary called Frosty's, then I'm going to be paying around $25. Uh, there was one that just opened up, and they've got $18 eighths right now. I don't know how long that'll last, but I'm hoping it's forever.
I think that, is that out the door, or is that like pre-tax?
Both of those are out the door.
That is concerning, I would say, right? Like, how have you grown before? Like, just when you think about your pricing at $18 an eighth, like those are not great margins.
Uh, I definitely agree, but I mean, looking at the flower and talking with the grower and the owner, I could tell it's good quality, and
Hmm.
it is surprising that they have it so low.
Well, I was going to say, even if it's good quality, that doesn't like sometimes that's just what they have to sell it for. So my question would be, how much profit are they actually able to make at that price?
Right. That is their lowest priced one. 35 is or no, they're saying that the viewer was saying 35 plus tax is what the average is here in
Okay.
town.
And I would say that feels in an okay range, right? Like, I'm pretty close to Michigan and I go over there and you can get some real good deals there. But like I was talking about Illinois earlier, you go there and that is home of like the $75 mids. It's, the taxes are insane, and they're also based on potency in Illinois. So the higher the potency, the higher the tax.
Right. So how do you feel about when you go into a dispensary? Do you prefer out the door prices or before the tax price?
I mean, I like to see things like, just tell me what I'm going to pay. And I
Right.
think especially when so much of these are cash businesses. And so it's like, I will go in, I've got $200, like, and then I'm like, oh, I have to take something off at the register because my tax was 35% and I forgot
Right.
to calculate that.
Right.
So I think number one, just because it's a cash business. And I think number two, because that's fair to the consumer. Like, because if it was 10% tax, like it is in, well, at least here in Minnesota on everything, that's one thing. But it's 10%, it's 18%, it's 12%, it's 6%, and it's 4%. It's not it's such an astronomical number in so many of these cases.
Yeah, we have a pretty high tax. Jess, do you remember off the top of your head what our tax rate is? I want to say so. Our medical tax is 3%, and that's all they get taxed. Which there's quite a few people here that are trying to fight that and get it so that they don't pay any
Yeah,
tax.
no, I would say you shouldn't pay any tax.
Right. What'd you say?
20%.
So the recreational tax is 20%.
Yeah, I mean, 20% is a lot.
Right. It is. Especially when you go in and buy like an ounce at a time.
Right.
That 20% really adds up.
Hmm.
Uh, So you were mentioning a kind of like a side company to the
Yeah, I call it,
Greenleaf.
it's an ancillary company to Ganjier. And so my company is called Sage Advice. And inside of Sage Advice, I do a lot of consulting here in Minnesota. And I also have my Ganjier community specific education. And I call that community education because, like I said, it really is a community effort. There are a lot of people who contribute their time, their talents to having these high level conversations that we do. Every Monday, we have a week or a monthly compounding theme in our knowledge building. So this last month, we did beverages all month, and we had 5 different sessions bringing in different people from areas of the beverage industry, the Cannabis Beverage Association. We had a formulator from Canada. We had a person who does like literally just the components of the extracts that go into it. We had somebody who talked about crafting their beverage and bringing it to market. And then we had someone just go over the whole canopy of different things, right? Because beverages, there's so many different ways that you can make infusions, and the way it's gone the last 24 months, it's really just exploded. So then this month we segued that into edibles, and we've been talking about, what does it take to get gummies specifically. Last week we had Guy Rocourt from Papa and Barkley. They're a very well-known California brand. They've won year over year best topical for their balm, but he's sort of a crock pot formulator, if you will. He uses whole plant ingredients. He uses all sorts of botanicals and things like that. So he talked to us about his formulations. And then this upcoming week, we're doing edible pairings. So we're talking to a California event company that throws these dinner. We've got a couple chefs joining in. It's a roundtable discussion. But that's what we do every Monday. Every Tuesday, I talked about the trade skill stuff. Recently we had a guy come on do a chillum demonstration. We've had joint rolling. We had Bovita come talk about their technology. We've had Canatrol come talk about their technology. It's all of these different companies that people reference throughout the
Well,
industry. It's
shit.
nice
Now I
to be
wish I
able
was
to get
there.
some one-on-one time and talking to all these different people. And then, as I mentioned, Thursdays are when we do our farm focus. And our first Thursday of every month, we have the cultivator come on and they tell us about their cultivars, their farm, all of the methods, all of that different stuff. So we get to build a relationship with them and really understand how the flower was grown. And that's very helpful when you're making an assessment. Oftentimes we try to keep things very blind from them. We don't tell them what the cultivar is. We don't, they'll know if they know the grower. Sometimes they won't necessarily know if it's indoor, or outdoor, or any of that stuff. But it's really been fun to get to see what conditions are like all across the country. And then we do our different assessments. We enter it into a Google Doc, and then we can see where everybody is from there. And we talk about the differences because sometimes there is, even last night we had a long discussion, and the guy in his jar had 2 samples that looked very, very different. And it's, entirely possible one was the top of the plant and one was from the bottom of the plant. And, from the color of the plant itself to the development of the bracts and the stigma, like it looked almost like it could be 2 different cultivars. We know that it wasn't, but it's really cool when you look at something at that level and not just by yourself. You've got a group of other people looking at it too, and they're like, yeah, no, and I noticed this on mine and I saw this on mine. And especially for people who haven't had an opportunity to see that much cannabis, and like I was that people, right? Like up until, I don't know, 2016, I think, was the first time I had a dealer that had a choice, right? Like before that, it was just weed. Do you have weed, right? Maybe back in the early aughts, someone would get a cultivar with a name, but never two, right? It was like that was blueberry was very popular, and there was some grapefruit, and that was it. Like, but that was the only thing it was. And I remember in Chicago, my cousin, when he moved there, he had a dealer that had like 2, sometimes 3. And that was right when Leafly came about, and you could like Google it. And I would be like, I don't know. Like, you can tell me all these things, and I don't know what any of them mean, but I'll just pick the best sounding name. So I think it was seeing that too, being like, I have a choice, but I have no information to make a choice with.
I totally know what you
Um,
mean.
yeah. So it's we've come a long way.
Uh, Back when I first started smoking, I'd go buy weed from my aunt, and she she always had one type. It always had a name, but she only ever had one kind. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay. And then a couple years later, I start buying weed from someone else, and okay, now they got 3, 4 different kinds, and it's like, well, what kind do you want? Uh, just give me a. I. Why do I have to choose?
Right.
Like you're making it complicated now. I thought there was just one strain at a time.
Well, but isn't it interesting, like you looking at it now and you notice the difference between the different strains that you choose? And it was hard then too, because one thing that I had not really ever given a lot of thought to as a inexperienced purchaser of cannabis is the bud structure. And you know how sometimes you would get a bag and you'd look at it and you'd be like, oh, this is a
Mm-hmm.
really fat bag. But then you start to break it down and you're like, oh no, it was just like either there was a ton of moisture still in it or it, was maybe just a more open structure
Yeah.
versus like, and then sometimes you'd get a bag and it'd look kind of small, but it's really like these dense and sometimes they're harder. And, I don't think I even started using a grinder consistently until like the pandemic at some point. Like I was always a break it down by hand and smoke it in a little bowl.
See,
And,
I've always rolled joints, so I've always had a grinder because
yeah,
it's just
because you
easier to
need it.
roll that stuff that way.
Yeah.
I remember back when we were growing, we'd grow these really, really solid eighth nugs,
Uh-huh.
and people would come over and buy them, and we'd hand them a little bag with one nug in there for an eighth, and they'd be like, "Yeah, ha ha, funny joke." No, like
You'd be like, weigh it.
seriously, watch this. And it's just big old fat nug.
Yep.
So, we had a viewer asking, but yes, she is in St. Paul, Minnesota.
That's right.
I've been to Minnesota once. We went there for I think it was my 6th birthday, and we went to the Mall of
Mhm.
America.
That is what many people do here.
Um, so I mean, it probably differentiates between people and how long they progress through it, but roughly, how long does the course take?
So it is entirely self-paced to take your online portion. And then you take your in-person training. They're very loose about the timeline. I was not like that's just my personality. I was enthusiastic. I was
Right, get it
excited.
done right
I
away.
wanted to just like well, and I drove out there. So I
Oh, damn.
in July of 2021 and we were like 15 months into the pandemic and I was just like, you know what? Like I need some time away from everyone.
Now,
And
did
so
you
I
drive
drove,
from Minnesota or?
I did.
Oh, okay.
And so I had done all of my online stuff at that point. And so as I drove from Minnesota to California, I stopped through a bunch of the legal states. So I
God,
dipped
that's
down
such a
into
long drive.
Colorado real quick. You know what though? Like I was saying, I've been locked in my house with my husband and 2 kids for 15 months. I just wanted
True.
to do things like I wanted to listen to what I wanted to on the radio. I stopped when I wanted to stop. I drove for 13 hours a day and listened to books on tape. Like it was just nice to be by myself.
Yeah, I bet. I
And so
literally
I
couldn't imagine being cooped up in a house with husband, kids, 15 months. Nope.
yeah, no, we moved, we bought a house during COVID, we got a dog, we had a baby, we like won COVID bingo. I'm pretty sure that we're why it's over, so you're welcome. Because we just did it all. We made sourdough, like a billion dozen cookies, everything.
I was working construction, so they didn't stop for us. We
No,
just kept
nothing
going.
stopped for you. Yeah.
No. If anything,
No,
it picked up pace because people wanted houses so they didn't have to deal with COVID.
ain't that the truth? No, but so as I drove out west, I stopped in all the legal states and I was able to get samples from all these different places. Because, like I was saying before, I didn't have an opportunity to understand what market looked like in all of these different places. And Colorado is still deli style, so you can go and you can say, give me, a gram and a half of this, gram and a half of
Yeah.
that, get some of that. I stopped in Nevada and then all across California. And so by the time I came back from my ganjier training, I probably had 30, 35 different samples of flour from across different areas of the country. And so that's how I did all of my training between July and September when I took my test, was just smoking weed from all these different places, doing my assessment. But it was hard because I was calibrating against what I learned in 2 days in California. And as much fun as it is too, like, you are smoking weed the whole time. So like,
Right.
you, to a certain extent, either have to like have a tolerance or not imbibe. And I think that's okay too. Like, there's no shame in that game. But yeah, it was an interesting experience just to see what they're growing everywhere. And so I continue to do that, especially here in the Midwest, in Illinois and Michigan. And any place I go, though, any place that's a legal state, you will always find me going to a dispensary because I'm just curious. I want to know what's there. I love consumer product goods. I love branding. I love marketing. Like, I love seeing all of this come together. I hate seeing what it's actually doing to the plant because so often it's just getting commoditized and consumerized. But I also, like, I want it in my skincare. I want it. I want it in my
Right.
toothpaste. I want it in my house. Like, give it to me everywhere.
Right. Like if I could remodel my entire house out of hemp, I totally would.
Right?
That stuff is so much more durable. Uh,
Mhm.
but at this point, with how many states have gone recreational, you honestly don't catch me in a state that's not recreational. I'm like,
Right.
oh, what's the point in going there? They're not very smart yet. Uh,
Not yet.
so flour or concentrates?
I would say mostly flour. And it's I think it just has to do a little bit more with the way I have to live my life, right? And I have this discussion a lot about the way men consume versus the way women consume, and not just the physiological differences in what happens in our bodies when we consume, but also the responsibilities that each of us shoulder. And like, in construction, you have a completely different set of responsibilities that I'm sure probably don't allow you to consume, like that. Or like,
I
there
probably
are
shouldn't.
well, and listen, I believe there are some people that are better regardless of their job that do, but I know construction is usually one of those places where drug testing is fairly common. But like, outside of some of those, like being a doctor, other things that might have a different level of attention or scrutiny to them, the way men and women consume, generalizing, men tend to be a little bit more recreational in their use, and
Hmm.
women tend to be a little bit more medicinal in their use and
Right.
intentional with their use. And that, by and large, results in lower consumption amounts. And I think a lot of that has to do with the responsibilities that come with being a mother in particular, where you never know if something's going to happen. You need to go pick up your kids. Like, it's always the mom that they call first, right?
Right.
And just the number of things that you're trying to be present for and keep track of. Heavy doses of consumption don't always work for that. For some people, they really do, though. Some people need those much higher doses. And so when I see states like Illinois that have laws based on potency, number one, potency testing is bullshit anyway. But number two,
Right.
some people need more medicine, and I don't think you should be penalized because you need more medicine. It's like, if I need more aspirin than you do, why do I have to pay more for stronger aspirin?
Somebody was saying government workers, heavy equipment operators, CDL drivers, etc. Most dab, it's less stinky that I've noticed. Back when I was doing construction, that is what I preferred to do, was dabs, because exactly that. It was less stinky. When I walked in, my boss didn't look at me and go, ah, go home.
Right. Smell you across the room.
Yeah. He was a 65-year-old man that He says he smoked when he was younger, and then just one day quit, and then all of a sudden he started hating on it,
Yeah.
and he'd talk a bunch of shit about the construction workers outside that smoke, and he could smell it. Oh, those lazy son of a bitches! Blah blah blah. I'm just sitting there like, this guy loves how I work, and I'm higher than all the guys out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I always say our triggers are our mirrors, right? So I'm sure there was something about that, maybe because he couldn't for some reason that you don't know of, or, whatever
Right,
that is.
right. That is a good point.
Mm.
So, is there anything else you want to mention about the
I mean,
side
it's
stuff
it's just
outside of the ganjier program that you do?
well, I would say, like even back in there, like it's an incredible experience. So for anybody who has the chance to go up there, like I said, there's a lot of love in those hills. There's a lot of history. The Ganjier campus is beautiful. It's like 240 acres on a mountainside. It used to be a martial arts retreat, and the people would go live up there for like 2 years and train to be like super fancy martial artists. And it has special cabins that you get to stay in. It has this beautiful meditation room. It's got a large training room. They have a chef up there that cooks all of their meals. There's a lot of just really cool opportunity that comes
Oh, it sounds like a
around.
nice retreat, if anything.
And it is available if, sidebar, if you don't want to become a ganjier, but you work for a company and you guys want to do retreats, or they recently had the Boston Beer Company came through and did this whole like drink tasting extravaganza. They've done some really cool events up there pairing with local, like Humboldt artisans doing. They did, let's see, it was high tea in December where they paired tea and hash together and some food. There's a
Ooh.
famed cultivar that comes out of there called Whitethorn Rose. I don't know if you've heard about it, from Huckleberry Hill. And Johnny Casale's got this amazing story, like heartbreaking, in the years that he spent in jail because of the plant. And it's it's such a interesting and unique cultivar, and every time you smell it, everyone's like, oh, I've never smelled anything like that before. And there's we have terpenes, and you have monoterpenes, and then you have these sesquiterpenes, and it has something, it's called selenodiene, and it's in a really large quantity, and you don't find it in almost anywhere else. And it's got this just really unique flavor to it, and they've done an amazing job of taking that and kind of getting that out to the masses. And so they had a whole dinner that celebrated that in its flower form, in its hash form, and in its rosin form. So you could take the same cultivar and taste it all the way through.
Ooh,
They
that's
also
nice.
did, yeah, a really cool premiere party for Frenchie Cannolis. Frenchie Dreams of Hashish. And so in that movie, Frenchie travels and talks to all these different artisan hash makers in Humboldt and Mendocino. And they had all of the farmers that appeared in the film come in with their different hash, and they paired it with food. And it was a really unique experience. So doing just some really cool stuff. And there's a lot of collaboration and camaraderie that comes out of the program. And definitely I see that in my community, and I see the networking and just people building different ideas. And like you were saying before, having access to information that they never had before, and people with different ideas that they never had before. It's really what I think takes us to the next level.
Yeah, it definitely helps because those people that are nervous and don't want to ask the questions, if they get introduced to the, or not even introduced, just happen to walk into the right room or bump onto the right Facebook page, uh, they end up, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Encased and just down a rabbit hole.
Hmm.
Which, jumping down a rabbit hole, bad sometimes, pretty good when it goes, when it's a marijuana rabbit hole.
That's right. Yep. There's a lot of good ones in cannabis.
Right. And you had said something that reminded me about nano, so I wanted to ask you what your thoughts of the I can't even remember what they're calling it. Is it like nano THC or um
Well, tell me, are you talking about beverages? Are you talking about edibles? Are you
yeah,
talking about,
edibles.
okay. So if we're talking about like nanotechnology, which is what a lot of edibles are, when we go back to when I was young and the first time I ever ate brownies was somebody who cooked them in butter and, they decarbed it, they soaked it in the butter and they made canna butter and that's what they made edibles with, right? And those are oil based. And when you fast forward all of that to trying to formulate drinks, that doesn't work well. You need to be able to make it so it balances and stays, it stays amalgamized there in the water. And so there is nano isn't a technical term. It has to do with the particle size that they break things down into. And so the smaller the particle size, the faster the absorption because now you have way more surface area.
Right.
And so again, it's not a technical term, but in most beverages and edibles that aren't done with traditional technology, they're using a series of different surfactants and emollients and bitter blockers and putting all of this stuff together and sort of encapsulating it in something that makes it stay hydrophilic. And so it stays in suspension in the water.
Right.
And so tiny, tiny little particles as opposed to like those bigger oily particles.
So in theory then, okay, so edibles don't affect me because my metabolism metabolizes them too fast because I don't eat
Okay.
enough food. Work too much, don't eat enough, so when I go to eat edibles, they just poof, gone.
Interesting.
Uh, Everybody's always like, well, these nano technology edibles will hit you faster, so they'll actually work. And it's like, okay, tried them, don't actually work.
Well, so you would think traditional edibles and even like nano gummies and stuff, for the most part, they have to go all the way through your digestive system and then to your liver. And so when you do something like a beverage, a lot of that gets absorbed in your mucosal layer. So you're going to have a faster onset time. And you can, depending on how much you are dosing and how frequently, you can kind of tailor that and ramp that up if you need to. But I think that's where you see a lot of the nanotechnology is in beverages, and that's where people might think that maybe you would have better luck with that
Okay,
because
see,
it
and I've
actually is
never,
probably more with the absorption.
I've never tried the beverages. I've always just tried just regular edibles. And then
Yeah.
there, so although there was one time I slammed a quart of edible ice cream from one of our
Ooh.
dispensaries, and I'm starting to think that I'm becoming lactose intolerant. And
I mean, a quart of ice cream is a lot of ice cream.
tell you what, I slept like a baby. That stuff hit me like a brick wall.
Yeah. So that did work.
Yeah, but I think it's because it was able to just sit in my stomach and
And like it likes the fat. Like that,
yeah,
like it likes that.
right,
So ice cream is full of fat. That's probably a great compliment to it.
right. All right, so you want to plug all your social medias
Yeah,
and
you can find me on Instagram at the Sage Ganjier and sageadvice.mn. And I'm also on LinkedIn, just Elizabeth Sage. I'm fairly active on both of those. I've got a boot camp that I'm doing. It is a summer brand booster boot camp. So inside of my Ganjier community, I have those core programs that I talked about, but I have a couple other things that are near and dear to me. So professional development is one of those things. And in September, we did a 7-month series where we took people through things like resume writing, networking, building a LinkedIn profile, how to build your Instagram profile. I'm trying to think. There was 7 of them, and it was a really big success. It was a lot of fun because, like I said, there's a lot of people that are in the industry that come from traditional parts of the industry that don't necessarily have some of the skills that you need to transition into some of the jobs that they want to have in this new industry. So as an extension of that, for the month of June, starting on June 3rd, I partnered with a local influencer. Her name's Kit Kenny, her company Cannabis. She's in the ganjier program, but she creates some amazing social media. So she did the class with me in professional development, and then we have one that's open to everyone. So the link to it is on my bio in my LinkedIn and in my Instagram, but it is 4 weeks long. You get 2 sessions per week. In the first part, we have a lesson plan. We have all sorts of fun handouts because I love a handout. I love being able to have the interactive component. And then 2 days later, we have a live coaching. So there's some activities that we ask you to do in those 48 hours. And then we workshop it live. You get to show everybody you're working in this larger group environment. And I think it's a great way to build camaraderie inside the cannabis community. So I'm excited to have something outside of Ganjier, where we have a tremendous amount of people that have already enrolled from the Ganjier community, but we have a lot of people from outside of it. So I really like that merger of my two different worlds coming together. So if there's anybody, it's difficult, right? There's a lot of shadow banning and censorship.
Oh,
Social media is confusing. It's
yeah.
awkward. Nobody really likes it. You just kind of have to get used to it. So if you can do that in an environment where people are loving and encouraging, it's a lot better than, like the rest of the internet where everyone's an asshole.
Right. Yeah, that definitely does sound pretty nice. Uh,
Yeah.
where can they find your newsletter?
They can find my newsletter. You can go to elizabethsageadvice.com, and there's a place on there to subscribe to my newsletter. It's called Sage Against the Machine. It comes out weekly-ish. It usually has just some musings, and then it's 3 things that I'm excited about that I like. A lot of times it's either about cookies or Bravo. Those are 2 things I get excited about frequently. A lot of times you find makeup in there. Sometimes it's just like fun stuff I see at the store, things that I think are useful. Their Instagram accounts. There's, like self-help downloads, because I love a handout. So if Mel Robbins or, one of those ladies has something new, I'm like, here, friends, like we all need a little bit of this, right? I recap 2 interesting conversations that I've had, because I have it's hard to choose, because each week I get to meet some of the coolest people that I think are in the industry. And so I picked 2 of those conversations to recap, to be able to give people a little peek into that. And then I give them one piece of sage advice, because that is, it's been my running joke. I have 9 girlfriends from high school that I'm still best friends with today, and sage advice has been going on since the 90s. And so to be able to bring it in, with cannabis to the masses is really it's full circle for me.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean by the uh, having conversations with different people in the cannabis industry. That's what I love about doing these podcasts, because
Yeah.
you just meet some of the greatest people.
Yeah. And that's, that's how I feel. And I do it three times a week. And then beyond that, just the network that it opens you up to, and the things that you realize, like, oh my God, I knew nothing about that. It's so exciting. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, ooh, and I get to decide it all, right? Like next month is all about women's reproductive health. And like, is my community 70% men? Yes, it is. And are they going to learn something? You better believe they are. But conversely, I will have a men's health month, because I do believe in equality, and I will also in that plug my women in weed. So twice monthly, I have high level conversations. One with 3 other co-hosts. One is another certified ganjier, Angelique Zarillo. She's a writer and researcher based out of Chicago. Her counterpart she's in the south side of Chicago. Up on the north side, we've got Elizabeth Cohen. She has done consumer product goods research and in big corporate America for the last 30 years, and she's sort of dipping her toes into the waters of cannabis. And then Sarah Tupper has her own product line in Michigan, and she's the co-founder of a consumption lounge there. She is the Michigan me. She lives in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm from Grand Rapids, Minnesota. We graduated high school the same year. We both have 3 kids. it's, like we're the different versions of the same person. So the four of us have a conversation each, like I said, twice a month. We bring in a special guest expert to come in, talk to us about something in the industry, and then we have a takeaway. So if you give us an hour of your time, we're going to give you an actionable item or something that you can come away with our session and have something to reference back and be able to, feel like your time was valued and you got something out of it. So you can sign up for Women in Weed on my website too. It's a lot of fun. Like we like when people interact. We love when you chime into the conversation. We have lots and lots of different people on there, and we welcome men. So that was my equal opportunity. I am raising two boys. Each one of my three co-hosts, they all have boys. So between us, 10 young men that we're bringing up in this world. And I think that it's not fair to ask people to just do better and not be willing to show them. So this is our space that we say, like, come listen to what we want, like take notes, do better. And next time you're in a room full of men, look around and say, hey, like, think of all those great opinions we got from women. Like maybe we want some more of those in here because we do have some good ideas.
Right, right. All right, on that note, it's been a pretty great show. We
Oh,
appreciate you
thank you.
calling in.
Yeah, I enjoyed being here. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really glad it went as well as it did because this is our first call-in show. So I was
Oh, do you
really,
normally have people in studio?
yeah. Normally it's always in studio guests. So I
Oh,
was super
cool.
super nervous doing it. I was all, oh, I don't know if it's gonna work.
Oh, no, I'm probably like because I do this so much. I think I don't want to toot my own horn, but I will because I think I'm a pretty good guest.
Yeah,
Because
well,
I know what
we
it's like
definitely
to be the
appreciate
host.
it. Right, right.
Like I've been in your shoes and you're like, now what? And I've
Mm-hmm.
learned because I'm a stoner too, like I will go off on a tangent and then I'll have to be like, how do I bring that back? Or like sometimes I just like it's a hard stop and pivot.
Yep. Definitely, definitely
But
know what you mean.
I thought this went great. So thank you again for having me.
I thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Have a
Bye bye.
fantastic evening. Bye.
You too.
Don't end the show yet. You can go back to the main one though. What's up, guys? Oh, that was pretty great. Appreciate you guys tuning into that, and I'm so glad it went as well as it did. I seen Dallas say dab time. I don't know if he's still here, so I'm gonna do a dab though, because that means it's dab time. I just couldn't do a dab. I didn't want to be coughing in her ears. What'd you guys think of the first call-in episode? Jess, what'd you think?
It's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I agree. We smoking on that tackling view. Jude said he wants to get some dab in there that's called Mama said. My mama said. Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, guys. I'm apparently stoned. We got to heat the nail up first. Yo, Dallas. Did you see that High Five, the entire website was 60% off the other day for Mother's Day in their 10-year anniversary? And I swear to God, if I ever get another text message from them. Oh, dude, for real, I seen you say that and I totally forgot you said that. But I definitely appreciate that. And I feel the same way. I appreciate it. But If I get a text message from High Five ever saying that they're out of stock on something I ordered, I'm gonna be like, so do I get the order for free? Huh. You got a free Jelly Roll shirt today? That's dope. I got 100 degrees left. 100 degrees. Oh yeah, Melissa, you missed quite a bit of it. It was a good show too. Very informative. What do you mean thought that was too fast? I don't know. I don't know if it's still 60% off, but like they're sold out of 25 millimeter coils. I don't know what else they're sold out of because they already shipped my order. I bought another kit. I had to get another box. I got to get one for the back room. Everybody's looking at me like, really? You bought another e-nail? I was like, dude, $98, 104 after shipping? Like, how could I pass that up? Unfortunately, I wasn't the only one that got that email. Hey, Melissa, I like your shirt. Yeah, I got another. I know, you're going to say, what do you need two e-nails for? One for the studio, one for the living room. Where's... What do you mean? I saved so much money. All right, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock in the morning. I know. Who does the morning show? This guy. Because I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, like every fucking day. We got special guest, Good Life Gang, coming in to talk about their cannabis show after party. That's, I keep seeing that they're advertising it as a Dizzy Wright concert, and I'm just like, how the hell you guys pull Dizzy Wright that short notice? I want the details on this. I can't wait for them to get in the studio, because I want the details on this. And it's a free concert? Like, what? How? Huh? All right, guys. I'm going to call it a night. Have a fantastic night. This was a great episode. I appreciate everybody that joined up and participated in commenting. Have a great Friday night. See you at 9 a.m. Smoke safe. Drive safe. Don't smoke and drive. You know my policy. I've talked about it previously. I don't give two shits. Just make it to Saturday, you know? I want to see you. Have a great night.
Been about time that we're going away. Been about time, it's a whole nother day. Put the heat on to the Tetons with the neon you can lean on. Never get beat on, hey. But you don't even listen, huh? But you're not even wishing, huh? You just keep on fishing, huh? Wonder where we go, we don't even know, huh? You hit me like a megaton. You hit me like a megaton. You hit me like a megaton.